11 years old. In the bloom of my girlhood, I moved bedrooms from the upstairs attic I shared with my sister to my brother's old room when he left for college. This was, up until that point, the first time I felt I had the chance to individualize myself. My first ever room of my own. 3 lime green walls and 1 pink, a bright blue and green polka dot bedspread, a purple shaggy rug, and 3 fuzzy multicolored pillows on my twin bed. My inspiration, of course, was Raven Baxter's room from That's So Raven. The perfect room for a girl who thinks she's old enough to have an innate sense of knowing what colors go together, yet still young enough to keep her stuffed animal piggy collection on her bed. Ironically, this was also the age I remember getting catcalled on the street for the first time. It was summer in Texas. I was wearing a yellow cold shoulder top, black high-waisted shorts, combat boots, and not a lick of puberty had become me. I didn't realize at the time that the freedom and perceived maturity of picking out your own room decor would also come with the imprisonment of being a girl. In this room, I taught myself how to play the ukulele because I had an odd obsession with the movie Soul Surfer. Regrettably, I ended up giving my ukulele to my first boyfriend and I haven't played since. 15, boy crazy, failing math, and deficient in iron, the age I changed my room for the second time. A more mature look for a now teenager. Paris was the theme. 3 brown walls and 1 pink, but a lighter blush pink instead of a hot pink. Pictures of Audrey Hepburn on my wall and a dress form from Hobby Lobby in the corner. In this room, I taught myself how to sew. Poorly, but still enough to make my own prom dress when the time came. I spent hours upon hours sketching dresses and brainstorming names for my future brand. I filmed my first YouTube video in this room, entitled Forever 21, Hot Topic, and Wet Seal Haul, which has now been scrubbed off the internet in a fit of teenage embarrassment, and I still have never been to Paris. 20. Still living in my hometown, looking at a life of climbing the retail management ladder and feeling creatively confined. COVID hit and I'm out of the job, so I used that as an opportunity to start creating content again. This is the age when I changed my room for the 3rd time. This time self-funded, with a more refined vintage style with a toile de joie wallpaper, floral bedding, and lacy curtains. More than a bedroom it had to be, it is my studio, my backdrop, and my feminine fortress. As I get older, I begin to understand more clearly what Virginia Woolf was talking about in a room of one's own. Most importantly, a woman must have money in a room of her own if she is to write fiction. Replace fiction with any other art form and the sentiment is still true. My room now has many antiques that I've collected, carrying the spirits of girls who once owned them. They are each a part of me now. The lovebirds on my sconces, the girls playing piano in the portrait, and my grandmother's wedding dress. The fig tree analogy from the bell jar keeps me up at night. I saw my life branching out before me like the green fig tree in the story. From the tip of every branch, like a fat purple fig, a wonderful future beckoned and winked. One fig was a husband and a happy home and children, and another fig was a famous poet, and another fig was a brilliant professor. She goes on to say that beyond and above these figs were many more figs I couldn't quite make out. I saw myself sitting in the crotch of this fig tree, starving to death just because I couldn't make up my mind which of the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing out on all the rest. And as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black, and one by one they plopped to the ground at my feet. In my room, I spend endless nights trying on different outfits. Not necessarily for the sake of one day wearing them or even for the sake of fashion, but to imagine myself wearing them in different scenarios. Each of my different figs requiring a new wardrobe. What would I wear if I was working on a film set, or a bookstore owner in a small New England town, or an innkeeper, or a journalist? I use my outfits to tell a story about where I am in life. I wonder what I'll wear when I'm a mother or a wife. And most importantly, would Lorelai Gilmore approve of my outfit? In my room, I romanticize and escape. I find myself always circling back to my childlike self for guidance. Like most girls when I was young, I played with Barbies. I dressed them up for their many different professions: astronaut Barbie, veterinarian Barbie, fashion model Barbie, and the list goes on. I thought eventually I would grow out of the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Instead, I became the Barbie, trying on different hats and creating my own storylines. As I grew up, I saw that Barbie, like myself, was also just a girl in her room haunted by the fig tree analogy. The confinement of four walls may seem isolating, but really there's a stairway to heaven at the top of my bookshelf, where the angels come down and say hello. My books are my guideposts. Jane Austen reaffirming my romantic notions, the Bronte sisters banding together to make sure there's still some angst and armor under my soft exterior, and Louisa May Alcott above all else there to keep the spirits of Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy all alive within me. I know these women also had a room of their own, to write and dream and weep in. I remember reading Little Women for the first time in my room. It was a kismet of events. Winter in Texas, and snowing actually. I'd just gotten my driver's license, and the power went out that night. It was out for 2 whole days, and I read the entire book by candlelight. A few years later, I took a trip to Massachusetts, and I visited Louisa's room in her ancestral home, the Orchard House. More romantically referred to as her bedchamber. 4 wallpapered walls, antique furniture, and artwork painted by her sister hung up on the walls. However, when I walked into this room, the first thing I noticed was a half-moon writing desk facing the window that her father built for her. This was the desk she wrote Little Women on. It was small, just big enough for some paper, pen, and ink. Here she wrote a novel that would change the course of American literature and impact lives of girls everywhere. Another thing in her room that stood out to me was an oil portrait of an owl painted by her sister May. May, of course, depicted by Amy in Little Women, the artist of the family. Quiet and calm, sitting upon a book, bird of the night, eyes facing forward much like a human. Something about it spoke to me, so I purchased this small owl painting on a postcard after getting a tour of the house. I now keep it in my room as well, in hopes of some talent and genius rubbing off on me. I keep going back to the Orchard House, like there's a gravitational pull between me and it. Her room is now a museum, but originally just a room for a girl writing down her stories of girlhood. I don't remember how to play the ukulele. My sewing skills are now subpar, and I'm sure one day, inevitably, I'll forget how to use Final Cut Pro. I pick things up and drop them, but my past selves will always be immortalized here. Through the writings in my diaries, the pictures, the little pigs, and the lock of hair on my wall. Unpublished yet not afraid to be seen, the unbreakable bond between me and my room. No matter how much I change, there's always a never-ending Ouroboros of my past selves coming back. Not to haunt me, but to comfort me, and to remind me that I'm not exactly defined by these 4 walls and the things in them, but I'm a girl of the world, collecting treasures and stories and knowing the ever-present privilege of having a place to keep them.